Good morning, welcome back to Ecocentric Homestead. I started to weed this bed on the warm day before I was setting the onions. And then I stopped. I said, I'd better not. There's a couple things I want to show you here. And one of the things is, when you do no-dig garden, you're layering on compost and mulch every year. You end up with a really soft soil. This bit I had to fast track because the water table was almost at ground level here. And because of that, the weeds don't have much for the roots to hold to. So with respect to grass, I'm hoping I can show you something here. You see how long that runner is? That one was connected to something over there. But in this distance, there was no grass coming out. I've laid out this line where I want my grass to stop. The grass is growing out here. It can send a runner underneath any weed barrier that I put here. And send up grass right in the middle of that bed. There are some plants that people use as rizome barriers. They say this won't grow through. Rhubarb being one of them. The other thing people do is put an edging down that goes down beneath the level of the sod, because these underground runners, they only run at the level of the bottom side of your sod on your lawn. The other thing is called deep hedging. If you go to the hardware store in the gardening section, you'll most likely see those. They call it half moon hedgers. Don't buy it. Your gardening spade, as opposed to a gardening shovel, has a flat profile going across this way. So if you're wanting to cut a straight edge on your lawn, you want something with a flat profile that way. If you are, say, in the suburbs or something where you have just mostly grass, this will do. See, it's also flat this way and this way. But when you're using this one, all the pressure that you put on it is spread immediately over this whole distance. So you sharpen the edge and you cut down. See, for me on this, it's very difficult, but that's because this is not your regular backyard sod. This is a variety of native plants here. For that, this is also a garden spade, but as you can see, this edge is slightly rounded. The half moon one, what I have against that is it actually comes from almost the top and a half moon. And when you're cutting your edge on your grass, the temptation is to make one cut and then go all the way over and make your second cut, in which case, in the area where the half moon comes up, you'll miss a lot of the roots, and especially the rhizomes that you want to make sure you're cutting off. this slight round on the end of the spade will make it easier to cut. As you can see, cutting very easily with that slight round. I've laid a line here just because I want to make this, the edge of the grass going along here, perfectly straight this time. If you're doing a curve, you could lay out like a garden hose or something. Some people even just eyeball it. They say, well, I can do straight enough line just looking down the line, which is fine. So I put my spade up against the line. I'm on a piece of wood there. And then tip it back, go over, overlap your cuts just slightly. Like I said, with the half moon you would have to do a overlap halfway, but with your spade you just need a slight overlap. Now this is a lot I'm taking up here just because it is actually the first time. As I was talking about the length of the rhizome, this grass here, okay, if I take it up, and even if I did, I'd pull it up and I got a bunch of roots and I say, woohoo, I got it roots and all. But what I did was break off the rhizome that's underneath. And it's still connected to the grass out here. So as long as it's connected to the grass out here, it has a life source and it won't die. You cut it off here, take away its life source in here, the rhizome will eventually die. Now here's a prime example here of what I've been talking about. This tree I planted a couple of years ago, and when I initially planted it, the planting hole was out here. Now so all of these grasses in here, they are coming from runners from that grass out there. And this bit here is from above ground runners. Here's a underground runner, one right here. Now if I were just to pull up that grass, I would split that runner and it would then turn into two runners and I'd have twice as much grass. So I'll just make my issue a little worse. I've got this tool here. Let's see if I can show you. You see, it's a mat going underneath. This is actually their above ground runners. They send out two types of runners, the rhizome type and this one where it's all really fine runners that goes pretty much right at the soil level, and that's what creates this mat. Looks almost like mushroom hyphae. But in order to get that out, I will have to cut this in here away from the edge. So before I even started weeding in there, I started down here just for the sake of the video. But before we even start, we cut down and cut down straight. Because if you don't cut down straight, you could slip it along one of those runners and not get it cut. Like I say, it's been a couple of years. That's why the mat of the finer runners has gone in as well. If you do this every year, you will have very, very little to take up. In fact, there's not very much there now. In so doing, got it back almost like it was before. When I sift compost, I'm going to put some more compost around here. In the professional gardening industry, like your landscape maintenance companies, when they tell you to do deep edging, I'll show you now. I'll do just a little strip right here. They leave a dip at the edge of the grass here to prove that it's been deep edged. The problem with that is those runners, they run just underneath the soil. So instead of just coming straight out here, it'll go down underneath this now and come up in the bed on the other side. So after you do your deep edging, you don't necessarily have to put soil there, but a fine mulch at least. Bring it back. Up to the level of your sod. That's the initial edging. I'm going to have to add some now because you can see right here there's a drop off. I'm going to have to add some mulch. I'm going to go get some sand because I've lost my source of wood chips. But I have a good source of clear sand, so I'm going to put sand back there. It was a bit of work this year because this is the first time, and there's a weed barrier underneath that, you see. But even though that weed barrier is there, this sod that's underneath here is still alive. So every year now, it'll be just a matter of going back and pushing my shovel in right where I did it this year and pick off the little bit of overgrowth. There won't be much. the edging was quite the task this year because I was catching up on many years of neglect, but I was having trouble with grass and other weeds creeping in, so it had to be done. Now, as you can see, it's a nice straight line down there. It's a little bit more difficult to tell right here where I've cut because I have the wood chip mulch there. And up along this way, and here I'm going to put down sand for mulch. I thought of many other ideas because I lost my source of wood chips, and sand seems to be the only option that I have. I have a ready supply of good sand, and I'll put it in the walkways as well. Patch by the house between the two grapevines and along by the shed. This is going to be looking ugly for all of this year, but I do have an idea. I'm going to be planting some stuff here, even though it's going to have this cardboard. I got some transplants that I'm going to plant down through, and I have extra sunflowers, so I'm going to put them along right there. Here's one of the heavy parts. It had grown all the way in among the rose bush, so I've got the outside taken away. Now I can pick away at the stuff that's further in afterwards, since I've got it cut off from the rest of the grasses now. Along here, this is my cold frames, and I've cut down all the way along that one. And all the way along this one. This is the lilac bush, and I found out when I was doing the snowball bush that the feeder roots are very close to the surface. So this is one of the areas where my only option that I know of would be the Ruth Stout or lasagna gardening. So I cut a rim out at the drip line, but even out at the drip line, you can see these are the feeder roots for the lilac, and so I've cut them off out here. We'll see if it causes the lilac bush much of a stress or not. But what I'll do now is I'll cover all inside this with cardboard and then mulch, and the cardboard will come out and dip down into this trench that I have made around. The snowball bush wasn't difficult because I had done it last year, and so it looks like a good deep edging, but as I said, that you don't want to leave it like that because your grass runners will just go down in under that dip and come up the other side. So now that I have this done, that grass in there, that'll be easy to get rid of, and I'll sift the compost and I'll fill this up again. With respect to this snowball bush though, it wasn't leaving out early for years. I thought the thing was dead. Oh, and here's a couple down here. You see the leaves are almost out, so it's coming out with the rest of the trees now, which is great. It might be because of all the compost I put down here last year. Now, speaking of the Ruth Stout or lasagna gardening, I started that here not last fall, the fall before. And well, it served a purpose. I did grow peas here last year. I got some sunflowers to grow. Out on this side, I have some flower bulbs planted. But as you can obviously see, there's a ton of grass. So you would have to put the mulch down awfully deep in the first trial to get rid of the grass in this kind of situation. So for this year I said no, not fighting it. When I started putting onions there and then I had to stop, I cut my edge on the outside and then I cut along by the fence and I just took the whole sod out of it. When we look over the other way, there wasn't as much here. So this was much better. As you can see, there's not I don't have to put much compost down here to fill it up. And this line is looking good again. On the outside of the fence now. I would get to it sometime, but in here I have peas and sunflowers and onions and a couple other things to be planting along this bed right here. Romeo was easy because he was just moved there last spring, and so edging around him was very easy. This is another one with the grass all growed in through, so I had to just put a trench outside, and with that little short hand thing I have, I'll slowly pick away at the sod that's growed in through it and get this looking nice again. Juliet cherry, she was also very easy to edge around. This is the pear that I showed you before, where the grasses were growing in, and it looks really nice now. I'm going to fill up to the top of the sod level with compost. These firecracker goji are still making me nervous. There's no sign of them starting to leave out yet, but the edging is done. This is my second pear tree. My second firecracker goji. These are my high bush blueberries. New plants for this year. 1, 2, 3. I was working at this one last year, so he looks pretty good. It was a little bit of a work to get the very outside edge, but not too badly. And for now, that's the edging I'm going to do. Maybe later in the year I might do some more edging, but what I've got done that I'm not fighting weeds growing into my growing areas, I've got the necessary stuff done. So hit like if you like this video, and I'll see you in the next video.